starting something. I trust and I hope that we've started something that's going to continue for a long time. Well, a while anyway. And that's great. My role here, simply, I kept being reminded of what Chief Justice Rehnquist said about his role in presiding over the Clinton impeachment trial. He said, "I did nothing, and I did it very well." Well, I've done nothing or almost nothing, and you can be the judge of whether I've done it well. But we're really pleased. George has already told us how he had the idea of inviting Peter, and the reason for that. And I thought that was splendid. And then I also saw we shared that podcast interview, Bloomberg with Peter via Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. So again, that was a way of kind of refreshing us on what an interesting and notable fellow Peter is. And I did suggest that Jim Zirin ought to be the one who interviews Peter, because Jim knows Peter very well and sees him often. And Jim, of course, is our semi-pro interviewer. So I think
that was the only mistake you made, John.
What?
In all the years I've known you, I've never known you to make a mistake like this one.
And what was that? What was that, Jim?
Choosing me to be the interviewer.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Right, Jim.
False modesty. Anyway, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Can I say one thing before we get speaking about Jim? I don't know if how many of you guys follow him, but he has become an extraordinary. His show is really quite amazing. He gets damn near everybody he wants to speak. And I got there in the early years, about 10 years ago or something, when you could get on his show. But nowadays, it's really world class. I encourage you guys to tune in. It's quite a show.
Well, thank you, Peter. That's good. I think you've made my afternoon, if not my day. Well, I'll lead off. Hi, members of the class of '61. Welcome to our mini virtual reunion with Peter Pettibone hanging in there with all of the technological know-how so we could put this thing on. Peter Georgescu with us. And of course, Peter is a legend in our class and in our country. I mean, imagine he came to America from communist Romania in his teens, not speaking a word of English except for Coca-Cola, which he can still pronounce. And he went to Exeter. He, of course, went to Princeton. He went to Stanford Business School. He joined the world-class advertising firm of Young and Rubicam, rose to become chief executive officer, and took Young and Rubicam public, and it emerged as certainly the leading, or perhaps one of the leading advertising companies in the United States and globally. But he retired Young and Rubicam about a decade ago, and since his retirement, he hasn't been on the beach playing golf. He's done a number of remarkable things, which he'll tell us about. And I'm just delighted that we can kick off this series with the most notable member of our class. So, Peter, welcome. Maybe we can start off talking about the hottest topic of the day, which is immigration. You were an immigrant. You came here. Your talents and virtues were inchoate. You didn't speak a word of English. What should be our immigration policy?
Well, I tell you, I have to. As you were asking the question, I have to respond a little bit, put an immigrant hat on. And I said that one of the most amazing things about America is the warmth and kindness and thoughtfulness that most people give to immigrants. You know, I mean, there are exceptions here and there, and there we got a few crazies. But in my experience in my life, it's been quite an extraordinary thing to just come out of the blue. It's almost like coming in from Mars. You know, I came from I had after the fourth grade, I didn't get a chance to go to school. I was in a communist camp, including hard labor, as some of you know, and so coming from that environment to America, it was the definition of future shock, you know. But along the way, I was teased, particularly at Exeter, and of course by my roommates at Princeton, including Joe McGinnity, the famous one, the real famous one here in the class, but it was quite remarkable to feel so much at home so quickly. And that's a tribute not only to us guys in this class, and we had a bunch of other immigrants as well. But I had to just start there and saying it's a by and large a very welcoming country and ready to help, and I was the beneficiary of a lot of that. So when it comes to policy, I have to go to a fellow called Peter Zirin. I don't know if some of you may know the name. He's an analyst, political analyst, demographer, very skilled guy. And he talks about the winners and the losers in the future world. And he talks about countries like China and says, you know, the reality is these are facts, not opinions. The population of China is in 40 some years is going to be 700 million people. Today it is about 1.4 billion. And that's because of the fertility capability of a country. The same thing with Japan. I mean, it's staggering to think the degree of difficulty that country is going to go through of that period of time. And both these countries, and Japan is the same thing. There are two countries that hate immigrants. In fact, there are no immigrants. If you're not a Han Chinese, you don't get to live there. And the same thing with Japan. So those are a huge disadvantage, those countries, because they can't replenish the population that they need, the workforce that they need, the economic well-being that is being fueled by the population. And we are fortunate. America's fortunate. We are just a little bit, naturally, we're just a little bit above sustaining our current size, maybe 1% or so. That's about it. And so immigration for America is critical, absolutely critical. We can't be the country that we hope to be. We can't have forget our kids, our grandkids and their children thrive and have a really comfortable environment and getting used to the kind of sort of well-being and the money and the economy that our country has had without immigration. So the issue is not whether we should have immigration, is how to do it smartly and rightly. And the current system with the sneaking at the border, over the wall, around the wall, through the wall, or even officially, it's kind of silly. So we got to fix our immigration policy. First, internally, there are about close to 10 million immigrants in this country that are in the shadows, and we need them. I mean, Florida would just go bankrupt if we didn't have the immigrants to mow the lawns, to do all the stuff that they do, to serve us food and beverages. And California wouldn't have any, there would be no wine in California if it wasn't for immigrants. And so, you know, how can you say anything but we need immigration, we need legal immigration, we need people who want to work to come here and pay taxes and do all the things that good citizens and good people do, have families and grow. And we know that so many of the people who are immigrants are just great neighbors and great people. And if you look in my business in corporate America, you look at Google, you look at Microsoft, you look at the top companies being run, they're either Indians or whatever. And India has almost a monopoly on the very top in America, corporate America, particularly technology and finance.
Hello.
And so what can I say?
Anybody
Yeah,
there?
immigration is part of the future blood of this country.
Jim, before your next question, may I just ask everyone to mute? If I muted everybody, I'd be muting Jim and Peter. So everyone other than Jim and Peter, please mute yourself. Go ahead. Thank you.
And turn off your phone.
And turn off your phones. Yes.
Listen, you could mute me. I'd be very grateful. Well, Peter, of course, we're a nation of immigrants. FDR scandalized the daughters of the American Revolution, addressing them as my fellow immigrants. And one element of our immigration policy, the one that's been most abused at the border, is that our law grants asylum to people. And asylum means not that you're coming here for a better life. Asylum means you're coming here because if you stayed where you came from, you might likely be killed and or tortured or persecuted in some way. And when you arrived, you really were granted asylum. Had you stayed in communist Romania, who knows what would have happened to you. Certainly your life there was not very happy. And I wonder whether you thought we should still grant asylum to people from all over the world, even if they have no particular talent, on the premise that we are a humane country. And it says on the Statue of Liberty, give us, you're tired, you're poor.
Well, I think we have to. I think we have to have some criteria for accepting people. I think that I buy that, Jim, in terms of those who are being persecuted, tortured, and so forth in miserable, awful conditions. And I think there are exceptions, but that's the exception rather than the rule. So I do think we have to be compassionate. I think we have to be caring, but I don't think this is a place for any riffraff that wants to just get in here because they want to get in here because they think there's a lot of free lunch. So I think you have to want to be here, and you have to bring along with you some desire to work, and I think some level of demonstrable decency and caring. I'll tell you, I'll give you for instance, example of what I've heard is being tested, and I hope someday will be the way that people will come in here and not sneak at the border. And in fact, really freeze the borders up to be borders and not to be, allowed for people to come in that way. But, apparently they're building some hundreds of offices throughout Latin America, for example. And you go to those offices and you apply for citizenship, and you have to demonstrate, and you have to be interviewed. And if you do that, then you get, you get approved to come in. And that's a very civilized, interesting way to do it. And I know that this was done in, for example, in Jamaica. A good friend of ours is Brenda Johnson. She was American ambassador to Jamaica. When she was there, that's how the system worked. And they set up offices, and they would interview people and so forth. And it's not an issue of left or right or Republican, Democrat. She's a fanatic Republican in that way, but that's what she thought was the right way to do it, and made a lot of sense. So I think there should be some criteria for, like in almost any community that you want to join. The doors shouldn't necessarily be open to everybody, to every crook or criminal or whatever. And I think there should be a system to be able to make a determination as to who really deserves to be here and wants to be a good citizen and a good member of this community, and play by the rules and the laws and so forth. So I think the persecuted and the fugitives from injustice and unfairness is one thing, but I think those are the exception, not the rule.
Well said. And another flaw, it seems to me, in our immigration system is that we have the greatest educational system in the world. Anyone will tell you that wherever you travel. And it's rather easy for students to come here and study, where they learn special skills and talents, and they ought to be allowed to remain. They want to remain because, of course, we pay higher salaries than perhaps they can achieve in their native countries, and because they want to stay for all the reasons that you've articulated. We Americans are a friendly lot. We extend friendship to and support to our neighbors, and that would include immigrants. But they have to leave because they can't get a visa, even though they have special skills. So we're educating people, and then they become people who could make a marvelous contribution to our economy and to our science and to our literature and to our education. And then we insist that they go back to their native countries where they can reapply if they want to. Are you as critical of this system as I am?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's, in plain language, it's stupid. I mean, it's crazy. I think we want to welcome anybody who wants to be educated in here. And I'm glad you brought out that topic, because I think there's a duality here in America. I think we particularly have been fortunate enough to get one of the finest education. We've done well for ourselves and for the communities because of the education that we received. And the tragedy in America today, in my opinion, is importantly driven by the lack of good education. And the reality is that we have too many people in America who lack good education or any education. There were some things around that I've seen and interviewed. And by the way, the Canadian television feasted on the stupidity of some of our kids, not because they're stupid, but because they're uneducated. They had candid television shows going throughout America, talking to some of the college kids. They would ask them, if Canada wanted to secede from the Union, should they be allowed to secede? And so there were there were many debates. There were many debates about whether they should be given the right to secede from our union or not. And it was hysterical.
Well, my favorite, Peter, is they asked somebody, could they name one justice of the United States Supreme Court? And the answer was Judge Judy.
Well, there's a lot of that. And I saw an interview with a young, looked like a late teenager, early 20s. She was asked to name 3 quick countries in the world, and she said, well, let me think. Well, what about Alabama, Missouri, and Vermont? Those are the 3 countries you could come up with. So, the point is, we have, I would say, one of the biggest challenges this country has is good education. If you look the OECD, and that looks after the developed nations of the world, there are 32 of them, and we rank at the bottom of the developed world in terms of overall, including the Princetons and Exeters and great high schools and New Trier and other Greenwich High and so many other great high schools in America. Put them all together, we still rank at the bottom of the developed world in terms of 15 and 16-year-olds competence in math and their native language. So we have a serious problem here on education, and we are the fortunate, lucky ones that for however we got to Princeton, and we got a good education, and too many Americans don't, and too many kids today, for example, here in New York City where I live, there are plenty of great schools now. It costs a lot of money to get there from the age of 3, which is what children should start to develop some cognitive skills early on. And if we want to have a real democracy in America, we got to really move aggressively to make sure that all kids, every child in America from the age of 3 starts to have a good education. That to me is
it's also what's being taught,
it is.
Peter. It's also what's being taught. I wonder if you don't agree
Yes.
with it. But
Yes, I
I
do.
don't know about Princeton today, but it's possible to get through Harvard or Yale without ever taking a course in civics, without ever taking a course in American government, and without ever taking a course in American history. Just basic courses so you can understand our government, our system, our legal system. And it's a shame because a lot of people emerge and they hear all these arguments and they don't know really what it's all about.
Well, I think Princeton, I must say, again, lucky us, because we had the first couple of years, we had fundamental requirements that we had to complete. We did have to take a science, we did have to take a math course, and some history courses and so forth. And that was absolutely an American history, and that's imperative. And you're right, Jim. I think this is critical. And it's not just Princeton. I don't want to pick on Harvard, but the same thing goes to the Harvard and Browns. You can take any course you want, anytime you want, basket weaving, whatever the hell you want. And I think schools like Princeton and the Jesuit schools, I love the Jesuit schools. For 2 years, you just have a set curriculum, and whether you like it or not, you're going to get out of there with an education. You at least know the basics. And many people go to college and they don't learn enough. And you're right, particularly civics. They don't know American history. They don't know what happened in our past, and so to be able to relate to what is today and what should be tomorrow. And that is one of the most vulnerable aspects of America today, I think, our relative lack of education for too many of our young people.
Bob, that brings me to another question, which I think will be of interest to your classmates. I was a partner at a law firm, and under the firm agreement, I was supposed to get out when I was 70. They kept me until I was 75 because they viewed me as productive. And then they said I was statutorily superannuated and I had to retire. You've done marvelous things since your retirement from Young Aruba Chem, and one can think of all sorts of non-productive things you might be doing. Why don't you tell us some of the things you have been doing? And because I think you'd be an inspiration to everybody.
Well, having been an immigrant, and in particularly in my case, Jim was saying, well, some immigrants seek asylum because life back there was not likely to be very pleasant. The reality is that my parents were stranded in New York because my father was Romanian, and he worked for an American company, for Exxon at the time, in Romania. They huge oil fields in Romania. And so he was here for a week when the Iron Curtain came down, and so he got stuck with my mother in New York, which is why I'm alive. And we were there. And the reason the communists kept us alive after they took over the country. And that's why he couldn't go back. Well, he could have gone back, but his pals from the war he used to work for the OSS, and they told him that he was on a list to be arrested and killed along with my mother. So he wisely did not go back to Romania. So we were separated for about 8 years. And the reason they kept us alive for those 8 years, they arrested my grandfather, killed him in prison. They kept us alive is because they used that as bait in a blackmail thing to get my father to spy for them. So it was the American people, in essence, all kind of strange, but too long a story. But anyway, that I'm here because a lot of people in America were indignant at the blackmail story, which was public, and so there was an outcry to help get us out, and we got out. So it was my life. I owe my life to this country. So that sort of had a major influence in how I thought that after I had a great education, which was gifted to me. Actually, it took me because they gifted it. I couldn't have gotten it. Are you kidding? I didn't have the language skills. I had a fourth grade education. And they took a chance on me, you know, and I worked hard, sure, but I got a lot of help, a lot. And so I always felt that I owed something. I owed back to this country that give me, I lived the American dream, you know. And what's the American dream? I can look in the mirror and I can say, you know, I am the best Peter Georgescu I can be, relative to nobody. Just I'm honest with myself. I'm lucky person to be able to have done what I did with my abilities. So now it's payback, and that's the context for why I decided to do that is my background, and so after I retired, I got caught after wandering in the wilderness for a bit, like we all kind of did. I got interested in inequality in America, and so I went hammer and tongue to figure out how bad was it, and it's bad. I talked about education. I talked about the fact that for the last 45 years, since the early 1980s, American workers never had a raise. They were paid at or below inflation for 40 years. And that's why we have the problems that we have today. You know, disenfranchised large groups of people who become disaffected, who become eventually, like in any other country, anarchists. And that's what happened in Russia. That's what happened in Germany. That's what happened in Venezuela. That's what happened in Argentina. And now it's kind of our turn to work our way through this stuff. So I got involved in that, and I realized that the biggest culprit in America to help create that thing was not the government or the Democrats or the Republicans, was business. You know, we got on this awful, ugly version of capitalism. By the way, I'm a capitalist at the core, but there are many versions of capitalism, and maximizing short-term shareholder value is not the right governance for business. And that's what we had for, as I said, still predominantly is. So then I got involved with, how do we change that? How do we make it better? Is there a better version of capitalism? And the answer is yes. When you worry about your customers and your workers, the company itself and the community, and even the planet, as much as you care about the shareholders. There's no law of nature that says that the shareholder, as they do today, should get 91% of the operating profits goes to the shareholders in various tax efficient ways. Why? And you don't worry about the communities, and you don't worry about your workers, and you don't care less about your customers. And that's not everybody, but that's the predominant law of business today. And so I made it my mission to really work aggressively to push multi-stakeholder capitalism, as I call it. And many companies do. And if you look at all the great successful American companies or global companies, they all practice this multi-stakeholder capitalism. Microsoft is the largest and most successful company in America. They pay their people amazingly well. They take care of them. They care about the community. They invest in communities. They care about their customers, et cetera, et cetera. And so Google does the same thing, and Microsoft did the same thing. And today, the best airline in America to fly, if you fly any, you quickly figure out that Delta Airlines the best airlines. And you know why? Because I flew them just last week, and I was chatting with the flight attendant, and she said, "Look, they treat me well. I like it here. I get profit sharing. I get a share out of when the company does well. I get a share out of those earnings. That's the way it should work." And so I spend a lot of my time really trying hard to say we have to adopt a better way for the sake of this country. You can't have a democracy unless most of the people have an opportunity. Look, we all did whatever we did according to not only our education, but our willingness to work hard enough and get as much work. You know, Jim worked until he was 75, for God's sakes. That's great. That's the way it should be. And so if you work hard and you get a decent education, and we want that opportunity for every American. And so I can look in the mirror and I say, you know, I know what I need to do today. So I have a purpose. And so I keep working at it.
Well, you've expressed this purpose since your retirement. You've written how many? 3 books?
Yep.
And you have, you're writing for Forbes, and it's not all about multi-stakeholder capitalism. You have other pet subjects that you've embraced and causes that you've espoused. And if you're not writing about them, you're speaking about them all over the country. I was down in Palm Beach. I saw you on a program from the 4 Arts, and people told me, I couldn't go there, but people told me that your address was very moving and very interesting. And so it's wonderful. You've really found a new career for yourself in your later years. Well, I think we could open it up, Peter. You've heard enough from me. And I know there are classmates that might have questions for you. Certainly what you've had to say will stimulate many questions. So I think Peter Pettibone told you how to do it, and you just press the right button and ask Peter a question. Unmute yourself. And
yeah. Go down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see an icon that says React. Click on that, and inside that you'll have a raised hand icon. So I see, and Jim certainly calling these people, but I'll make the first call. Bill Ewing, unmute yourself.
Thanks.
Your question.
Yeah, my question is, I like Pete's ideas, thoughts on immigration, but I wonder, you take people in Darfur at every bit as much risk, more risk than Peter was when he came here. But they have no access to some American consulate to apply for asylum. What are they going to do?
Yeah, well, you know, what can I say? How tragic it is. And it really is tragic. And your heart goes out to them. And we live here today in New York City, as I was complaining about the traffic that is in snarl because all the dignitaries from around the world go to the United Nations. And I was thinking, you may or may not like Woodrow Wilson, but the idea of creating a world-class nation, excuse me, not a nation, but a accumulation of nations, communities that can look after in the world. And I must tell you, the UN does unbelievably good things around the world, unbelievably good things. Not enough, because we are still, look, people say, how the hell can we do some of the terrible things that we do to each other Darfur and Sudan and so many other places around the world that are in abject poverty and misery and infighting and wars and all of this. And look at Ukraine and Gaza and all the rest of this thing. And you know, the human condition has not evolved to the point where the kindness and the genes of goodness and compassion and caring overwhelm the instinct of evil and all kinds of bad, tragic stuff that happens. And you know, the point is that we can't. I wish we had the capacity to feed the world and make peace around the world, but that's just not the reality of what it is. And yet, we need to move in that direction, and we should use and develop greater institutions that we have today. We have a World Bank that gives loans to countries and tries to bring them along. And as I said, the UN provides food assistance and healthcare assistance around the world. And there are other private organizations that the International Rescue Organization in America that does amazing jobs, and they go in harm's way. So we as a country do a lot. Do we do enough? I don't know. But we do a lot, and we should do clearly more. And that's why we should get our own stuff together, so to speak, and start at home to be kinder to ourselves and to our own people, and then reach out to other places in the world to do that. We're the most philanthropic country there is in the world. We do more for the rest of the world than anybody else. And yet the need is overwhelming. So I think we have to have a reality check of what's doable. And as I said, I think we should start at home and fix some of the problems that we have today, and then have the capacity to do even more than what we do around the world. So that's my
per capita. You'll find that Sweden does more.
Say again.
I think per capita you'll find that Sweden does more.
Yeah, they might. I'm not suggesting that they don't per capita, but in terms of the impact that we have around the world, it's still rather remarkable. And you know, the reason I'm talking about at home is because the level of caring and compassion has to be in us as a people. When I talked about my experience as an immigrant, it was about us as a people in America, where I was welcomed. And today, not everybody is welcome here. And so that's what I'm trying to say, that we have some work to do to get to the point where we are better and respond more compassionate and caring to all of our people. And as we do that, we'll be more caring and compassionate about everybody else in the world.
Okay, so I want to get as many people in as I can. First, a shout out to Bill Ewing. Bill, I haven't seen you since college, and gosh, it's great to see you and hear your voice, and which is the same voice I heard a half century or more ago. And I remember when we rented a flat in Greenwich Village and lived like hippies for one spring break sophomore year. And that was a lot of fun. But anyway, Joe McGinnity, I'm going to call on you. Tell us how you indoctrinated Peter Georgescu at Exeter and made him into a Democrat.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm pushed to even guess which way Peter votes. He's always been an independent-minded guy. Even in our walks back from the library, we shared a carol there doing thesis. We got into some pretty heavy discussions about one thing and another, including like what should people do in life and this sort of thing. We never saw completely eye to eye on that one, but I would have to say that he had the advantage of knowing some great people at Exeter. And when he got to Brown Hall in his freshman year, he had several guys who were great. Lee Hegner was one of them. Peter, who were your roommates freshman year?
Miller Biddle. He was a year ahead of me that came to Princeton, and I roomed with him freshman year.
He was great, yeah.
He was a great guy and a great soccer player as well, and so I was very fortunate. So it was the entry to Princeton was simple and easy before I met some true desperate group of people like Joe McGinnity and Lee Hegner and Hugh Scott and Bill Miles. God, we had a great time. We did have a great time.
I'd appreciate your telling folks about our wedge play after dinner with Scotty and everybody else, and what your role in that was.
Oh, Jesus. No, I'm not going to go there, Jers. I've acquired just a modest amount of wisdom over time. And one of them is to say, don't go there, Peter. Don't go there. It's very dangerous territory. But we did have fun. We were brutal. We tackled each other. My God. Well, we probably all did that. But our rooms were, so we roomed together for 3 years. Same guys, went to each other's weddings. We still hang around. We still are in touch. We're very fortunate to have those long enduring friendships. And Princeton.
Georgescu, you're an incurable sentimentalist. Let's go to Woody Andrews. Maybe he'll ask a question that won't make you cry.
Peter, I'd like to ask you about the community responsibilities of a corporation. It seems to me that is fraught with a problem, and that management is left to decide how to use the corporate funds. And I think Milton Friedman a long time ago wrote something opposing such a concept. How do you advise corporations, or what guidelines should there be for the donations they make to support the community?
Woody, let me answer the question in this way. Let me start not with the community. Let me start with the issue of why should corporations care a lot about their people? Because that gets you to the community. And I say, in my opinion, in today's world, probably in the past as well, but today's world, there are two things that will keep a company thriving in the future, and that's you do two things. One, you got to innovate. Secondly, you got to increase productivity. What's productivity? It's the value you create by the number of people that you have. As simple as that. You do those two things well, drive productivity, get more out of the people, and so forth, and the company is going to thrive. Why do you have to take care of the people? It's because only the workers, it's not the C-suite, it's not the CEOs, it's not the people around the CEOs who really create and add value and increase productivity and create innovation. It's your normal average employee and the workers. That's what it happens. And the reason you should care about those people, and that comes not only to what they do in their life, but what they do in their home. And you want to make sure that the community in which your people live is decent. And that's why you should care about people. That's why you should care about making them. It's not only a moral and an ethical point of view. I mean, this is what many corporations don't understand, that the better you take care of the people, the better off you are. I now serve as a director of an organization called Just Capital. And we rank companies from 1 to 1,000 in terms of justness. What's justness means? Take care of the people, pay them fairly, create decent quality products. So the top 100 most just company return to their shareholder, by far the vast rate of returns to their shareholders comes from those companies that take good care of the people, take care of their communities, and now increasingly are going to have to also take care of the planet. So that's what good, smart capitalism is about. And that's why the communities are so important. And you have to think about the community and the families where people live, etc. It's a holistic way to think about it, and you make more money. It's as simple as that. And that's the battle. It's so obvious. It is so rational, but by God, any change is hard. You get to try to get people to do the right thing and so forth is very, very difficult. But that's just human nature. We don't want to change. And we think, gee, if Milton Friedman was alive today, he was a very smart guy. And I think he would be very upset to see how business has turned out to be using him as an excuse. He never said what.
Okay, we got a lot of people who want to ask questions, Peter, because you're so.
Okay, I'll stop.
Let's stop, Peter. How about Charlie Rippon? You have a good question. Good to see you,
Jim. Thanks, Peter. Great to see you. I think we were in the Navy program together at Princeton.
We were.
My memory, which is beginning to fade, but we were together in the NROTC program.
We were.
Great to see you. And Jim, thanks so much for moderating, and John for setting up this great program. Real quickly, I wish we had more time to hear about how you managed to get over to the United States. I know that's a great story. I've read about it. You've told me about it. But I have a question about your entry and coming here really from starting from zero. Okay. It seems to me. What do you attribute and I say this, the tremendous success that you've had in life, beginning with a notable private school in New England, and then a university well known in New Jersey, and then going on to great heights. What do you attribute that? What sustained you, and what drove you?
Wow. One of the things that have helped me, I always look back on my youth, the 5 years from age 10 to 15 when I was forced into hard labor. And I said how fortunate I was to have that level of education. It was a different kind of education. It was a matter of survival, it was a question of resilience. And I learned a lot of fundamental things, and I developed when I was a young kid was ridiculously irrational. But I thought what drove me at that time is that in my mind, I said, if I can demonstrate to these people that even though I was 12, 13 years old, and I could work as hard as an adult that was around me, that if I did that, they would recognize how important I would be to them, my value as a worker, okay? Now, that was irrational. That's not what they had in mind for me to be there. But as a kid, that was my survival mode and purpose, was to work harder, to do more, to do better, and that sustained me. And those early habits, Charlie, is what sustained me in the early years. I never looked at Exeter or at Princeton as working hard. That was second nature to me, and so much more fun using my brain than using my brawn, which I had to do. I cleaned sewers, I worked on high tension wires, I dug holes for telephone poles and electrical. So it was, I learned what work was, and I learned to respect it, and I always use it, and I work hard today. I still work 50, 60 hours a week. And that's just part of who I became. And so I was very proud of working and now the kids are so much better. And you know, the kids who go to Princeton, I was an advisor along with other kids in the political science department, which I majored in. And what they're learning today compared to what I learned back there is unbelievable, unbelievable. It's like Bush League to the to the pros. It's just amazing how much more the quality of education and what these kids have. And I just hope they appreciate, and all the kids in America appreciate and work as hard as they know how to do. And I think as parents, that's what I tried my hardest to try to instill the importance of working hard and caring more.
Okay, we have time. We have time, Peter. There are, I guess, four people with their hands up. So let's take 3 people with their hands up. Let's take the 3 questions, and then maybe you want to.
I'll be shorter.
And you can briefly answer all of them because our time is limited. So we'll start with Phil Pritchard quickly. You have to take yourself off mute.
You're on mute, Phil. You're on mute.
Unmute.
Okay.
I didn't mean to raise my hand. Thank you.
Okay, good. That disposes of the first question. We have a CIA operative who travels under the code name Cheese. So Cheese, state your name for all of us and put a question to Peter Georgescu. And unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you. John Cheeseman.
I know.
I hope. We're all children of World War II. I'm a student of military history, that war and Korea and Vietnam and others. And I hear daily almost our commentators, our journalists, our government officials, politicians talking about how strong we are. We're the #1 strongest nation in the world. I've always believed that. I've always wanted to believe that we were strong enough to be able to defend ourselves and to defend the right way in this world somehow. Sometimes we've done it superbly, some not. But I worry, and then I hear about the Navy not being able to meet its quota to man our ships. We can't build enough ships now to service areas of the world. The Army has trouble meeting quotas. The Marines, I believe, are the only ones, George Brinkley can speak to this, to have met their quota, I believe, in the last year. I'm not even sure we're able to fight a limited war right now based on the number of people who are in the military, who are eager enough and dedicated enough to join. I get very concerned about that. And somebody reassured me that I need not be. I'm not talking about using our nuclear weapons. We've got plenty of those, but I mean a strong military.
Okay. I think a strong military.
Wait. We have one other question. Maybe you can answer them both. Don Emerson. Unmute yourself.
Go ahead, Don. You seem to be unmuted, but I don't hear you. I can't hear you. Doesn't work.
Now you're unmuted.
No, we still can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, Don.
Sorry, Don. Okay, why don't you answer Cheese's question and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, Cheese. Listen. Two quick things. I think I worry about the same things, and not only about a strong military, but I really object to the fact that these kids don't spend any time like many of us did when we grew up and serve the country in some fashion, whether it's, and by the way, whether it's serving the country in military ways or in some other ways. There's so many things that need to be done. I think some civil service for young people, men and women both, is critical for America's good health. And to know that being a citizen is not just it's not an entitlement, it's a responsibility. It comes with doing something. We're not squatters, for God's sakes. We're here, there are homes here and roads and planes and stuff, and somebody did that, and somebody fought for us in wars to be able to be a free country. And we got to feel a greater sense of responsibility and work harder, both militarily and in other ways, to help our country grow. So that's my answer.
Okay, Phil Bruner, I didn't see you, and I wanted to say hi. I haven't talked to you in a number of years. You haven't changed a bit since college, but I have a question for you. Is Kamala going to take Wisconsin?
Well, that's a good question, and it's going to be very close. I don't dare try to call it because there aren't any journalists who seem to be very good at it either. But we'll see what happens. I'm actually in Minnesota now. I came to Princeton from Wisconsin, but Jim Lane and I are both living in the Twin Cities area.
Okay, so you're now living in the wonderful state that gave us Tim Walsh. That's very good.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I think the time has come to wrap up. And John, Cooper, over to you.
Don't neglect Michigan. That's an important state too.
Peter, can I just say one thing?
Go ahead, George.
I've been tracking how many people we have. 61 people on this call.
That's a good
great.
number.
That's a good number. That's a good number right there.
Yep. That's
That's
the real,
that's
that's
the
the
special
count.
number.
I think it's wonderful. And they all came to see Peter Georgescu, and I think that's terrific.
And Jim Zirin,
John
and
Cooper,
all of you.
John Cooper, please continue this. I think it's terrific. And
That's the plan, Jim.
Tune in next time. It's going to be even better.
Absolutely.
We'll see.
From good to great. You're good, Jim. Let's make it great. So you guys,
You're
listen,
great.
good to see
You're
your
great.
faces.
You're beyond
Keep on
great.
smiling. Keep on trucking.
But most of all, this was a hell of a lot of fun. Okay.
Peter,
Thank you, Peter, for what you do, and John, and all of you guys and jurors who helped the class. My hat's off to you. I really love you for doing this. And George,
over to you.
the
George and
Bible,
Len, our webmaster.
Yeah,
and a week faster,
Hats
exactly.
off to all of you.
good.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody. For any last, Peter Pettibone, any last words for us?
No, but this is a great beginning, and we'll in 3 months or so we'll have another session. So thank you all for attending, and come to
Okay.
the next one.
Okay.